All right, welcome back to another episode of Hydrate. Today's a really special day because we get to film in Gretchen's kitchen. My dear friend Gretchen, who has created the Nourishing Kitchen Masterclass. And today we made some muffins, so definitely cannot wait to try these. And we're just talking about Gretchen's story and how she went from being on camera, eating going through different diets, and then being vegan, and ultimately going back to eating whole foods and nourishing. So I'm so excited to have this conversation today because your journey is similar to a lot of people's journeys. So I can't wait to dive into this. Now you are teaching a Nourishing Kitchen Masterclass. So I'd love to know more about, and we've got Gretchen's beautiful daughters here in the kitchen. I'd love to know more about how that transition came about.
From vegan to how I eat now?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Well, it's definitely been a huge process over the course of many years. I would say that starting when I was 15, I was in high school. I remember going on a diet. I think I went on the Zone diet, and I was so strict about it. I lost so much weight. I was so strict about portions and calories and protein and carbs. And because I lost so much weight, I was like, wow, this is really great. But at the same time, I was also a really intense athlete. I was playing tennis, riding horses, and I just had a very active lifestyle. And I was so skinny, and I just didn't have enough endurance to do what I was doing. So food just was a huge part of my life. I didn't really want to eat a lot of it, but I knew I had to whatever I ate had to be very specific and small.
Yeah.
And then I went to college, and I never thought about nutrients or what food can do for my body in terms of nourishment. I just thought of it as how can this make me lose weight and be skinny. So anyways, in college, I definitely, lived a different lifestyle, and I did gain some weight. And so then after college, I was like, I need to do something. And so I went vegan because I saw some documentary, and I'm like, you know what? I need to go vegan. So my whole family went on the vegan plan, and we didn't know what we were doing. We just knew that we needed to only eat plants.
Yeah.
So I wasn't eating highly processed vegan foods, but a lot of plants, right? So we lost a lot of weight again, and we're like, this is great. Vegan is the way to go.
Yeah.
But after doing that for several years, I started noticing nutrient deficiencies. I had really bad skin. Why would you have bad skin if you're only eating vegetables? I went on the gluten-free track, which, gluten-free, you eat gluten-free products, which are not good for you because of the ingredients in those products. So then I went plant-based, and then I think by the time I was pregnant with Arabella, I was plant-based, but I was eating say meat or fish once or twice a week. So at least I was having some protein. And then by the time I was pregnant, and I had a healthy pregnancy, a healthy birth, by the time I was pregnant with Olympia, I was on to this plan where I need to focus on nutrient density. And how can I do that? So I got into properly preparing my grains and beans and nuts and understanding what all that is, eating the right quality meats. And so I've just gotten into sourcing my ingredients properly and eating whole foods and preparing everything from scratch and just getting really good at that and understanding it. And after eating like this for several years now, I've just noticed that my health is so much better than it's ever been. My energy, how I feel, how I think. Okay, we're gonna get the muffins.
Muffins are ready. Okay, so we just made some muffins that you're gonna see on the YouTube channel. So we're gonna get these out, and Olympia is letting us know.
I'm gonna get them out in 2 seconds. Yeah, so I've just noticed eating these quality nutrient dense foods for the past several years have totally changed my life. from like how I look out on the outside to how I physically feel on the inside. And then of course my children, I feel like, are very, very healthy, and they eat the same way that we eat. So yeah, it's definitely been a growth and a process, and I'm very happy with where I am at today.
Yeah, you're radiant. Your skin's radiant.
Well, I'm pregnant.
You got excited about, you brought in the meats, you started bringing in a little bit of dairy, and then it's almost like with food, you go down a little bit of a rabbit hole, right? Where you're like, oh, this is healthy, but how is this being made? How is it processed? How is this animal being fed? How is it being treated? Where did it live? Right? It can get really sticky.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, first of all, like, I've always been, like, very health focused. Like, I was raised in a household where my mom was always, like, cutting edge for, like, whatever the health trend was, right? And I'm not saying that it was necessarily, like, the right thing to do, like, whatever we were eating, but I do know that, like, she tried her best to, like, always give us the healthiest foods. And when I was younger, me and my siblings, we were all looked at as being kind of weird because we had weird food, and we didn't have cereals like the Lucky Charms. We didn't order like pizza, and didn't have like those cookies that you buy at the grocery store. We just didn't have anything like exciting like that in a box. Everything that she made was, made from scratch. So we were always health focused. And then like throughout my life, I continued to be health focused, but like in the wrong way. I would look at the nutrition facts, like how many calories does this have? How many proteins? How many carbohydrates? Is this going to make me fat based on the label?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are like that because that's what we're taught. They're like, you need like this many calories in the day. You need this much protein, this much carbs, whatever. So we look at the labels. But really, what we should be taught is like, you shouldn't be buying food with labels for the most part.
Yeah.
And if you are buying something with a label, you want to really know like what are the ingredients that are in that package.
Yeah, how much nutrition, how is this going to feed my body as well, nourish it? And
I think when you do live by eating foods out of packages, or even if you're not eating it out of a package, you're never satisfied, because whether it doesn't have enough nutrients, or like if it's something coming up in a package, like you're just like the serving size is not enough, right? So it's like you want to have more. And why do you want to have more? Well, it's doing something to your brain, like, the chemicals that they put in these foods these days, the preservatives, and then like natural flavors.
Yeah.
Natural flavors aren't natural.
I want to get into that.
They're produced, they're an ingredient that's produced in a lab, right, by the brand to make somebody want to eat something. It's like, how can I make this flavor so tasty? And they don't have to share what that natural flavor is because it's proprietary.
Yeah.
So, the reason like
could be MSG. It's a lot of chemicals.
Yeah. Or even just something that like, causes your brain to like want to eat more, like that sensation, And so they have like these laboratories that create your food, and you don't want labs to be creating food.
And even organic foods, and then it'll say natural flavorings, and a lot of people trust that because they think, oh, it's organic and it's a natural flavor. So what is natural though?
Well, I think natural flavorings that doesn't have to be considered, like it's such a small % of the product that it doesn't actually have to be like organic, right? Because it's such a small percentage.
Yeah. So when you're looking at flavorings, unless it says organic flavoring, then you're okay, because we know that actually has to be whatever the flavoring is. It's got to be made from food source. But if it says natural flavoring, the natural can be anything, basically.
Yeah, I think that if you see a natural flavoring and it says like from blueberry or something like that, maybe that's like more trustworthy. But if it's just natural flavoring, I would steer clear from it.
Yeah. Since it is such a small amount, the FDA considers like a flavoring such a minute amount. It's like it doesn't really matter.
And it's proprietary, so they don't have to disclose it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like my philosophy is, unless if like I know exactly like what the ingredient is in a product, like really simple ingredients, and there should only be a few ingredients, then I really don't want to eat that or feed it to my children.
Yeah.
Because it has its repercussions.
It does. Especially over long term.
Yeah, and if you make exceptions, like, I mean, you start to make exceptions like all the time, So it's kind of like you have to be strict about what you put into your body. Otherwise, like, how often are you going to allow yourself a slip up,
Yeah. So what kind of differences do you feel in your body going from vegan, not eating as much, maybe limiting your caloric intake, to eating whatever you want? Well, as long as it's whole food, right? So you're not limiting yourself to calories or looking at how many carbs is in something. You'll eat a pizza, you'll eat whatever you want, but you make it from all whole foods that are sourced very intentionally. How do you feel in your body?
Well, I mean, like on the outside physically, I think what I've noticed most significantly is my skin, the quality of my skin. I struggled with really bad skin, like since I was a teenager probably. And I just always had texture problems, little bumps on my foreheads. I tried all of the acne medications and nothing really worked. It would just inflame my skin. I didn't have any glow, no, brightness, no vitality. I looked very gray and dull. And so makeup was definitely something that I relied on to look like a decent, healthy human being, which probably only made matters worse because, the ingredients that go into makeup are also toxic.
Yeah.
But so I've noticed and it's taken time. It wasn't it was overnight. But my skin definitely today is very hydrated. I don't have textural problems and I have glow. So I'm happy with my skin that I don't even have to wear makeup.
Yeah, I love that.
So that's been really good, which means that my body is healthy on the inside because, your skin is a reflection of what's going on the inside.
Absolutely. It's the last organ to get the nutrients.
Yeah. So, and then my energy, I can do everything I want to do. I have tons of aspirations and goals that I want to do. I'm pregnant. I'm 34 weeks pregnant now, and it's just I have so much on my mind that I want to do, and I'm pregnant. I'm tired, and I don't feel physically the way I want to feel in terms of my body being large. I have so much that I want to do, my brain is clear. I just feel I'm functioning on another level. Yeah. The other thing is my relationship with food is amazing. So when I struggled with the negativity that comes with eating my whole life, today I literally don't even have those thoughts in my mind anymore. And pre-pregnancy, before this pregnancy, I was eating everything I want to eat, preparing foods the way I always do, and I was skinny, I'm healthy. I'm at the weight that I am supposed to be. So if you eat the way that I eat, you may lose weight if you need to lose weight. If you don't need to lose weight, you won't lose weight, right? But it's just understanding the balance that you need for your own body and what makes you feel good.
Yeah, that's ultimately what we want, is our bodies to be nourished and balanced. I think it's really difficult, this narrative that we've been sold that we need to look a certain way or be a certain way. How about being healthy? And that looks different for each person. Based on our body constitution and the way that our build is. And so I think that there's so much messaging coming towards people every single day. You go to the grocery store and there's messaging. You'll just see gluten-free or keto or vegan, and it's a lot of marketing that we're seeing. Commercials, Instagram, it's constantly bombarding us. And what I perceive is that a lot of people are confused. They're oh, wow, this documentary talked about being vegan, and that sounds so persuasive. And then you've got the documentary about fish and how we can have fish, and then you've got the documentary about meat, and there's just so many things, and then the messaging can be very, very confusing. So I love what you're doing, how you're just going back and taking it to the basics. Let's look at the way more our forefathers ate and the people that were healthier. But a lot of people will argue too. They'll say, well, what about the cavemen? They just ate meat, and we shouldn't be eating grains. So then we've got the carnivore diet, and there's so much. I feel it's becoming very dogmatic, where there's a lot of different camps. you know? And I think that there are times and places where people's bodies are so inflamed that maybe they need to take a step back. Like someone with a really intense autoimmune disorder, maybe the carnivore diet is great for them for a little while to see, all right, let's calm all the inflammation, put the fire out, and then, but that's not something that I personally believe can be sustained forever.
Right.
I've done it myself, just like you were talking about the dogmatic eating. We're like raw vegan for 3 years, or keto, or whatever the things are, and they feel good at first a lot of times, but then it's not sustainable.
Right. I think most of these diets feel good at first. That's why, and you see results, because it's like you're drastically changing what you were doing before, and maybe you're cutting out something that was unhealthy that you were doing before, and so you're being more strict about what you're eating, so you're automatically just going to lose weight.
Yeah.
So you feel like because of that, like it's working. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes you continue to do it. But yeah, like what you're saying, it's not sustainable. Veganism is not sustainable. I know a lot of people are going to like disagree with me, but I've had a lot of my own followers reach out to me and tell me that they were vegan for 12 years. And after 12 years, they had so many health problems, whatever they were. And then they've taken on the diet approach that I have now, and like it's completely changed their life.
Yeah.
These are people that are vegan for 12 years. So it just causes nutrient deficiencies, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's different for everyone, and some people will have different health issues that come about based on their diet. But yeah, like if you are giving your body the correct amount of nutrients, you're going to feel good, you're going to look good, and you don't need to label yourself with a certain diet. It's not about that.
So how does this look practically? So let's just say the listeners out there, like, okay, great. You're telling us that we need to eat healthy, things with no labels. How do you start?
And I think the word healthy, it bothers me because that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Like
It's overused,
Like
right?
if I say like, if someone says, oh, this is healthy, I'm like, that's not healthy.
Yeah.
No, that's not healthy. You know?
Yeah.
And so when I use the word healthy, like, what does that even mean? Like to me, if I think of the word healthy, I'm thinking of like a salad with like no dressing and like a lean chicken breast. That to me like is what people think of when they think of healthy, right?
Right.
And that's actually not healthy.
Yeah.
So, what was your question?
How does someone get started? Where do they start?
Okay.
How do they activate their kitchen?
Yeah. So that's what's most important is making a commitment to eating this way, because if you're not committed to it, it's going to be really difficult. You know, your kitchen is where you need to start. In my course, I talk about having to purge your pantry and your refrigerator and get rid of all of these products that are bombarding your home and that are causing you to not be successful with your health. So you're going to purge your pantry, your fridge, and you're going to stock it with really high quality, good ingredients that you've sourced properly. So that's where I would start, is just getting rid of the processed, like things with labels, buy real foods.
So most people are going to think, well, then what do you eat? Right? They're like, everything
Everything.
has a label, everything has a box, everything does. So,
Well, if you think about it, okay, so our ancestors, no matter where they were in the world, they always ate meat, vegetables, and dairy. And so maybe some people didn't eat as much meat, maybe more people ate dairy, or vice versa. But they all ate these ingredients, and that's what they lived on. They all properly prepared their grains. So like in no traditional society, did they ever just like eat a grain. They would soak it, sour it, ferment it, and then they would cook it, and then they would eat it. So it's like this whole process that goes into like preparing a grain.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean when I'm talking about like properly preparing. It's a preparation technique. Like we don't prepare foods the way that we used to prepare them. So people were very healthy back then. They didn't have health problems. They made food based on like wisdom, ancestral wisdom, carried on generation after generation. And in today's day and age, we don't have that wisdom anymore. We rely on these companies to market to us, to sell us the health foods.
Yeah.
Or the right foods.
Yeah, they tell us what's healthy, right?
And that's obviously
whatever the trend is.
Right.
This is healthy because it's keto. This is healthy because it's carnivore. This is healthy because da-da-da-da.
All they have to do is put a label on it, and if that label is what you are, then you're going to buy it. And the food industry is a huge business, obviously. So how can they sell their product to you?
Yeah. So, okay, so you purge your kitchen. So you take out all the things that have labels. And then what do you bring in?
I mean, some labels are okay. Like, for example, like I always say like convenience foods are terrible, but there are some convenience foods that you can have. Like, for example, a high quality einkorn pasta, boxed pasta. So that's the only ingredient in that is einkorn. So like I'll have that in my pantry. I'll have like a high quality pasta sauce with only like, the right ingredients, tomatoes, basil, some seasonings, whatever it is. Nothing additive. So you can have some products, on your pantry shelf, and then you've got like all of your beans, your grains, your nuts. Everything's like in bulk, in containers. It's very whole.
Yeah.
So you get rid of the other products that are just, I consider junk and poison.
Well, like we were talking about, for an example, I think a great example is we made these muffins today, and somebody would say, okay, you're going to have einkorn flour. So they would go buy ground flour. But the difference is that when you're buying flour, it's rancid because it's been exposed to oxygen and light, and it doesn't have the protective layer of the fiber anymore. And so that's something that's like so simple. It's like same thing, but not same, right? So you buy einkorn grain or you buy einkorn flour, that's completely different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's true. But I think with einkorn, I think if you are at least like making the shift to einkorn, that's like a good first step. And if you're not at that point where you're ready to mill your own grain, sure, buy the whole wheat einkorn flour and then properly prepare it. Like soak it and ferment it, whatever you're going to do. But I think the first step would be like for sure like removing the all-purpose white flour, modern wheat from your pantry.
So why is wheat bad?
Wheat is just completely hybridized. It's a modern crop. It's heavily sprayed. The gluten structure affects us negatively. That's why a lot of people have problems with gluten and digesting it. It's the way that the agricultural industry has like basically reworked wheat, the grain, to be able to produce more wheat, right? So it's a highly profitable crop. It's almost like they've GMO'd it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not what it used to be. Einkorn is a wheat, but if you have a gluten intolerance, you probably won't have an intolerance to einkorn because it's not been hybridized. It is ancient. It's like the original wheat, the original form. So the gluten's totally different.
Yeah, and that's something people listening to this may not have ever even heard that word einkorn. So it's spelled EINKORN, and it's the ancient grain.
The ancient wheat, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, gosh, we think about this and wheat has been given such a bad rap. But like we were talking about before, it's not necessarily the wheat that's bad. It's the way that it's been processed. It's the way that it's been sprayed and hybridized. And all of those things are affecting the way that our body's able to process it and digest it.
Yeah.
So you use a lot of einkorn.
Yeah. If I'm going to do a wheat product, I use einkorn. There's other options out there that I've never used before, but I've heard they're ancient and good options as well. Like there's one that's called kamut. Okay. Heard of kamut? Mm-hmm. And there's another one. I forget the name of it now. But yeah, there's a few ancient non-hybridized wheats available.
Okay.
I just prefer einkorn.
Yeah. And it's pretty easy to get a hold of. Okay, so we start with that. And then you talk about fermenting. And so what does that do to the food?
So all grains, nuts, and legumes, they have phytic acid and enzyme inhibitors. And you need, in order to, if you don't neutralize them, if you don't properly prepare them, you're going to have problems with digestion. You're going to have nutrient, mineral loss, because basically the phytic acid pulls minerals out of your digestive system. Mm-hmm. So if you're constantly eating grains and nuts and legumes, you're constantly stripping your body of important minerals. Yeah. So the reason that I ferment everything or soak it or sour it is specifically to help with digestion and to increase the bioavailability of the vitamins in your body. Nice. And so you actually don't even get these vitamins that you think you're getting if you haven't prepared these items with the correct techniques.
So how do you ferment something? How do you ferment your grains?
Well, let's see. So it depends. You can either soak your grain in a water with a acidic medium, like a raw whey or an apple cider vinegar, and you let that soak for like a day. So that's the soaking process.
So you want the water to be acidic when you're soaking it.
Mm-hmm. And then you could also use a sourdough starter, which I love. I didn't used to use a sourdough starter, but ever since starting to work with one, I'm like, I only use sourdough starter because it's just, I don't know, it's easy, it's quick. I say quick, it's like at least an overnight process. But so then you would take your flour and you would mix it with water, warm water, and your sourdough starter, and then you let that fermentation process happen, which happens naturally in my pantry. All of the good bacterias working together in the yeasts. And then the next day you have like a risen dough.
Yeah.
And it's pre-digested the grain and it's ready to bake.
So you take that dough and you make pizza dough, you make muffins, you make pies, whatever you want, right?
Anything you want.
Wow.
So like people will have a recipe for making something that rises and it calls for instant yeast. I never use instant yeast because it's like another modern invention. It's like they're trying to bypass what naturally has to happen over time. You can't like speed up the fermentation process. It takes time. Instant yeast gives you like this artificial leavened, product without having to ferment.
Yeah.
So yeah, the sourdough starter will give you that leavened product, and then you don't need instant yeast. So I never use instant yeast.
So no, don't use instant yeast.
I always think it's a red flag if I see a recipe with instant yeast.
Yeah, I agree. Where do you get the sourdough starter? So now, do those starters a lot of times use some sort of gluten that we don't want? Are they using einkorn grain to start it, or
so you can?
Does that matter?
You can make your own sourdough starter. It takes depending on like your environment, everything's different, but it could take like 6 to 10 days to create your starter, and it's literally just flour and water, and you feed it every day until it's got enough going on that it's bubbly and it's active, and it's active enough that it could rise whatever you want to bake. So you can make it yourself. You can also borrow some from a friend or take some from a friend, which I'm going to give you some today.
Oh yeah, I'm excited.
That's the easiest way if you know somebody that has a starter. And even if they are using a sourdough starter with your modern wheat, it doesn't really matter because you're going to feed it several times. And over the course of feeding it, like with your new grains, such as if you're using einkorn, it'll get rid of like the old stuff.
Okay.
Because every time you feed a starter, you also discard, so you only have a little bit every time that you're feeding.
Yeah.
And over time, it'll turn into like whatever you want it to be.
Okay, so you could have it forever.
Yeah. Oh, I actually got my starter from somebody who sent it to me, and it was a starter that's over 100 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh, I can't wait to get it. Excited.
So, and then you can also potentially like ask a bakery for some of their sourdough starter. I'm sure they wouldn't mind. All you need is like two teaspoons to get your starter started.
That's a great idea. Go to a bakery that you trust.
Yeah. And otherwise, I think like Cultures for Health sells a sourdough starter.
Yeah, they do.
I've never used theirs before, but
I've ordered that one before, but then I didn't keep it up.
yeah, you have to keep your starter
like a
up.
baby. You got to keep it up. Like you go on a vacation, you're like, can you come feed my starter for me?
Well, you can put it in the fridge for a period of time. I've done that before.
How long? Like 2 weeks? Is that like the maximum, or?
I mean, honestly, like it's hard to kill a starter. So like it'll just take time to get it going again. The longer you leave it, I think the more deactivated it becomes.
Okay, so you just have to reactivate it.
Feed and feed.
Okay, gotcha.
So
okay. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the grain and processing and fermenting. What else? So the soaking is important as well, like with nuts. So I remember I used to eat so many nuts when I was the same thing in the industry and worried about how I looked and all of those things. It was like I would eat tons of nuts.
Did you have a skin problem when you ate a lot of nuts?
So yeah, totally had a skin problem.
That's
breaking out all the time. Even now when I eat nuts, I break out. I'm on a no nut cleanse right now, and my skin cleared up.
Your skin looks really good.
Yeah,
I think nuts they disrupt your hormones. I think if you have a large quantity of nuts, I think a few nuts here and there, fine, whatever, no big deal, especially if it's been prepared properly. like if you're eating nuts regularly, significant amounts.
Yeah, which I was.
Yeah, I know people that eat a lot of nuts.
A lot of my calories came from nuts.
Yeah, raw nuts. They think they're like good for you. And a lot of people say that they're really good for you, so people listen. But I've noticed that people that do eat a lot of nuts I think it disrupts their hormones, and that causes skin problems, and it's probably causing other problems in their body too. Skin is just one of the issues that might show up.
So what do you think about nut milks then?
Same thing. I mean, I don't like it. I think if you have like a nut milk that you've prepared yourself, or if it's a good brand like that Milk brand, it's a sprouted almond with water, that's like a good option. But I don't necessarily think it's something that you should have in your daily diet.
Well, most people that are having nut milks, there's a lot of binders, glues, gums.
Totally.
A lot of things that are sugar, a lot of things that are disrupting
it's not even
the
a nut milk.
dysbiome.
It's like everything else.
Yeah, they're causing dysbiosis in the microbiome, and it isn't. It's not a nut milk. It's like just sugar and whatever. And they're not soaking those nuts and doing all those things. So I think milk is the only one that if I had to get one, it would be that one.
Right.
But the rest we make at home. But we were on this cleanse. The medical medium has my daughter Grace on a cleanse because she has the autoimmune alopecia. And so we have just been fruits and vegetable cleanse. And then once a week we'll have meat. But just taking out everything else. And so there's 0 packages in our home, right? It's like we'll bake a potato and put a little salt on it or steam some veggies. That's it. Yeah. And it's amazing that I don't wake up with any puffiness in my face. And I always felt before, I'm a very healthy eater. I eat foods that don't really have labels and all that stuff. But taking out the nuts made such a big difference for me.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. They can be very disrupting to the hormones. Even like seeds, like flax seeds are very estrogen. Estrogen dominant. They can help your body produce too much estrogen. And if we can overdo it.
And so this is like a huge problem, I think, is people say the healthy way of like making a cookie these days or like a baked good or whatever it is to substitute with almond flour.
Yeah.
So almond flour has become like this huge trendy product.
Yeah.
People are substituting, like your flour with a high quantity of nuts that obviously haven't been prepared properly. But even beyond that, it's like you're having all of like this nut in your regular
really
diet. And I just don't think I don't think we should be eating nuts in those types of quantities.
Well, I don't know about you, but I feel that it's always beneficial to look back at nature and think like, if I took an almond off the tree,
totally,
it'd be really hard to crack that nut. Yeah. And how many nuts would I be able to crack before I'd get bored, right? I might be able to have 3, 5 of them.
I'm all about that philosophy.
That's it, right? Yeah. So, but when I buy a big bag of almonds from Costco, it's easy for me to eat it like popcorn.
Right.
But nature would probably detour me from that because of the shell, how hard it is. And so that's a message to me, like that shell is really hard and it's difficult to open up for a reason.
No, I'm like all about that philosophy. Yeah, but I always think like that. Like would this make sense in nature?
Yeah.
And no, it wouldn't.
Like an egg, you just crack it really easily. And
well, so an egg, I was actually thinking about this the other day with eggs. I think eggs are extremely nutrient dense, and this whole this whole negativity around like eggs being high in cholesterol that like we've been sold for a long time, and it being bad for heart disease, and you should only have like 1 egg a week or something, is like total rubbish.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, if you have eggs or if you have chickens, chicken lays an egg every single day.
Yeah.
If you're getting an egg every single day, like you got to eat it. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think it's a good idea to have eggs every day. And, the most important part of the egg is actually the yolk. And we're told to have like no yolk.
White,
if you're going to eat an egg, just eat the whites.
Yeah.
And like, that's literally just protein. Mm-hmm. The egg yolk has everything that you want in it. Like it's got the choline, brain development. It's got like the essential fatty acids. It's got the conjugated linoleic acid if they were raised on grass. So yeah, it makes sense to eat eggs every day.
But I think it's important to point out and go back to an egg. not all eggs are the same, right? So the eggs you're talking about, you've got your hens in your backyard that are eating the grass and they're eating the blueberries and they're getting the sun and they're walking around and they're being rotated and all of that. And then we have somebody who hears this and they say, oh, eggs, right? So good for me. And you go buy conventional egg, or like you and I were talking about, pasteurized organic eggs that are fed soy and corn, and then you're eating that soy and corn. And so I know my daughter, Grace, who has the autoimmune condition, we did the AIP diet for like 3 years. One day we went to a restaurant and we ordered her a salad with balsamic vinegar dressing. She hadn't had eggs in years, and within moments of having this salad, her whole body broke out in hives. So I went back to the chef and I said, what's in this balsamic dressing? And he said, oh, we put a little egg white to bind it. And that egg white sent her body into this crazy
Was it a raw egg white?
I don't know if it was raw or how he did it, probably, but it was probably also a conventional egg white. And so we do know that a lot of people have sensitivities to eggs, but there's crypticides in our conventional eggs. There's the corn, there's the soy, there's so many things that we can benefit from taking into consideration. And not everybody can have hens in their backyard or live in a place where they have that ability. So what would you suggest? How can people know if they're getting an egg that is actually nourishing them and not causing these inflammatory responses?
Yeah. So this is like my philosophy with all food. You know, you can't really say like have milk, because it's like, oh, what type of milk? Like where's this cow from? Like where was he raised? How was he raised? What did his environment look like? What was he fed? So like you just can't be so general these days. Like you can't be like eat chicken either.
Yeah.
It's just like it all like is like what is the quality? Like this whole like hoax of questions that you have to ask. And I go into extreme detail in my masterclass about this. But basically you need to know where your food is coming from. And yeah, it's not like the easiest thing, but like once you have done the research and you've taken the time to ask the appropriate questions, so you know everything about like how your food is being prepared or how your animal was raised, then you've done it, and then now you know, right? So it just takes that initial like effort and knowing, and like even like the wherewithal to ask these questions.
Yeah.
You'd be best off like starting at your farmer's market, you know, not the grocery store, because at least you could talk to your farmer then. And I'm not saying that everyone at the farmer's market is doing it right either. They're not. So you have to ask some questions. And you have to ask them, like, what does your farm look like?
And maybe go visit, because
if they let you.
Nowadays it's tough to even trust. Like my daughters and I used to love to go visit farms. That was one of our favorite thing, would be to go see how, you know, the animals were raised and whatever they were growing. And some farms will have little picnics and stuff where you can go hang out and experience
that's
what
great.
they're doing. And so to get more in touch with that and get to know your local farmer, there's so much benefit in it. So I don't have the luxury of having the time to have chickens and growing, you know, my meat. I don't have enough land to have a cow or all those things. So I need to rely on someone who does. But I think it can be really beneficial to like go visit at least, right?
You should. You mentioned like being in touch with like what's happening at the farm.
Yeah.
Like I think most people are completely out of touch with their food. They don't even know to think about like where is their food coming from. They just accept the fact that it's like sold at the grocery store on a shelf, or in the fridge, and they don't even think about like what the animal looks like, where it came from. Like a lot of people
don't want to, because it's like that animal has to be killed, and you know, it's like I don't want to think about that.
But you should know where like how the animal was raised. So like like I don't think you would want to know if most meat that you buy at the grocery store is conventionally raised meat. So
and it's so
like
sad.
Yeah, and it's disturbing and it's disgusting. And so people wouldn't want to know that. But like if people did know that and they knew that there was another option for them, I'm pretty sure they would want to choose like the better option.
Yeah, I think everybody would. I mean, who wouldn't? Like you drive by, you know, you're driving on the 5 up to Northern California, and they have like these conventional cow farms where the cows are just so close to each other and they look so miserable, and it stinks, and they're in their own feces, and And that's why they have to feed them the antibiotics, because they're in their own feces in these close environments and they're not getting fed well, and they're getting fed the soy and the corn and just to bulk them up, and they're unhealthy and they're living a really sad lifestyle.
And that's the food that you're eating. Like, you are what you eat. You are what you ate.
Yeah.
So like, you are ingesting that animal.
Yep.
Is that really what you want to be eating?
No, absolutely
Or
not.
would you want to be eating like a cow that was raised on lush grass and only fed grass? Cows are only supposed to eat grass. They're not supposed to eat grain.
Yeah.
But they feed them grain to fatten them up and to marbleize the meat and whatever. That causes the cow health problems, which translates to your body when you eat it.
Right.
So, yeah, I think.
So it's not fair to the cow and it's not fair to you.
Right.
And when we really think about that, okay, we don't want these animals to live this lifestyle that is just so inhumane. Like, it's just unkind. And we don't want to be eating that flesh that lived that life, because it's becoming a part of us. Our cells are, we're regenerating our cells, and everything that we put in, we become. So we want to definitely think about that. Now, some people might have this objective where they'll say it's just too expensive to eat that way. What would you say to those people?
Well, there's ways of decreasing food costs for sure. Like, you can buy meat in large quantities from a farmer for a discounted price and keep it in the freezer. I have so much meat and cheese and other things that I keep in my freezer. So you can buy in larger quantities. But the other thing is, food at the grocery store is actually like, it's too cheap. And the reason why it's so cheap, and we're just like, we think about this in the wrong way, is because they're raising our food conventionally. Like, they have to make as much money as they can. And so they stuff all these animals into like these confined areas, and they feed them cheap food so that they can sell us cheap food. Food isn't necessarily supposed to be cheap, you know? Like, I'm now into the farming business, and I'm not saying like business, like I'm doing it for business, but like, we're into the farming industry now because we knew that we had to take control of our food supply. And I can tell you that the amount of work and time and like knowledge that goes into raising animals properly and like raising vegetables properly is insane. Like, I could never make any money selling the product that I needed to sell, like for the price that the grocery store sells it for. Like, we're raising $500 chickens. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, if you really figure like how much time and energy went into raising these animals and doing it properly. So, yeah, I think if we eat the right foods, our health will be really good, and we won't have to spend all this money on medical either, you know? So if you just think about like where your money is going.
Quality of life.
Yeah.
But also, I notice when I eat nutrient-dense foods, I don't need to eat as much.
Right.
My body isn't as hungry, because a lot of us are overfed and undernourished. And so you're eating more, it's costing you more because you're buying more. But then when you eat nutrient-dense foods, you don't need as much. So I feel like in the end, you save money, really, from your medical bills and your skincare products.
I mean, think about all these like these products that you buy at the grocery store. They may seem cheap. If I ever buy like boxed like crackers, even if it's like a sourdough cracker or like a healthy looking like boxed cookie, my grocery bill is like so high when I start adding in these like little like chips and like, you know, like little things. And they're not food, and that's not a meal. It's not going to satisfy you. Yeah. So like, if you were to like compare like even like just weight of like a chip to like your meat, like the meat's going to make much more sense. Yeah. You know, because the chip isn't food, and that's not satisfying you.
I grew up with my mom making beans and rice all the time. I mean, that was a staple. There was always beans and rice on the stove. And that's so inexpensive. I mean, it's like beans and rice cost nothing, and you can soak them to get most of the phytic acid off, and then prepare them well, and they taste so good. It's always a crowd pleaser. The beans and rice together have all of the amino acids to create a complete protein within them. So I think that there are ways that you can do it and actually eat even cheaper than you're eating right now, because just like you said, the chips and the crackers and all those things add up. And even though it's a cheap food, we're also eating a lot of it because it never fills you. I could eat a whole bag of chips and still feel hungry.
Right. And then you'll feel terrible too.
Yeah, you'll feel sick.
It's true. I mean, another thing is like, I'm so careful with my food too. Like I don't waste anything. Like I know like the ingredients that I buy are high quality. They cost a certain amount of money, whatever. I've put a certain amount of effort into like making these foods and getting them. I'm not going to let anything go to waste. And like what you're saying, like these foods can last you a while. Like if you've got your bulk grains and your bulk beans, like that's in your pantry. Like that gives the meal for a bunch of people, and it satisfies.
Yeah.
And then you've got like you could have like frozen ground beef, 100% grass-fed ground beef in your freezer. You can divide that into many people. So yeah, like the amount of times that I actually like will shop in a grocery store is very slim.
Wow.
I get by with food for
a long time.
Quite a while. And then if you start growing your own vegetables, well, then you have more options.
Yeah,
and
you do, and it can get really fun.
Yeah.
I've been so inspired by this conversation with you today, and I know many other people are going to be very inspired as well. So if people are interested in taking your master course, how do they go about doing that?
I think the easiest way is to go to my Instagram profile, which is Gretchy, Gretchy, and then just click the link in the profile, and that'll give you, my top links that you would want to look at, and you can see my master classes there.
Nice. Okay, so people can find you at Gretchy on Instagram, and then what's your website?
It's nourishingkitchen.teachable.com.
Okay.
That's where you can get the master class.
So they can either go to Instagram or they can go to your website. And is there any last words that you would like to leave the audience with?
Well, let's see. I would say that we can control our health, and we can do that through the foods that we eat. It's could be very simple, and I think that you don't need to rely on anyone for your health. You know what I mean? Like you don't need to rely on a doctor, medication. You can control your health if you are equipped with the knowledge and the tools. And so I would highly recommend doing that.
Yes.
It's changed my life, and it's changed my family's life.
Knowledge is power.
Completely. Yeah.
Because we are sold a lot of narratives and stories, but like, what is the truth? So I think our body tells us that when we eat the food, right food, we start to feel good. We're like, oh, okay, we know that there's something to this. Well, thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to eat your muffins.
Let's have a muffin.
Let's do it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy.